What is going on, everybody? We are back with an episode of FSP Overtime. You know how we do it, more mellow, more chill, less script. I am Jason Burgos, senior editor at MMAsucker.com, and as always, I'm here with the Viking Prince, the hardest working strength and conditioning coach and dad, based out of Florida, the man, the myth, Phil Daru. Phil, what is going on?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of disclaimers. I got my son here. He's running around the gym. He may be calling me to change his trucks on YouTube. He's working with my phone right now. So just in case, I'm giving you guys a heads up. But I'm doing well, Jason, and I'm glad I'm get to talk to you again. We haven't done this in a minute. So it's glad to be back, brother.
I mean, we're going to be delivering a whole bunch of content at once. It's some really good content, because I always love the FSP Overtime. They do well. I get some good downloads from. I said, then we're going to come with a Joe DeFranco episode. I mean, it's going to be really exciting. But, I mean, let's go right into it. I mean, with this episode, I like it in that I'm going to ask you about a couple of upcoming and possible fights. And it's interesting because a lot of these names here, you are personally connected with. I mean, they're fighters you're training right now for big fights or for big fights coming up. I mean, I'll jump right into it right away. The first one is, I mean, we all know Joanna Jedrzejczyk is going to be rematching Namajunas at UFC 223 in Brooklyn, which I'm glad to find out you will be coming to Brooklyn for that. I'm excited for that. And, hopefully I can get to holler at you while you're up here. But, I mean, so how are things going so far? I mean, how's the camp going? Are there any differences in this training camp going into this fight compared to the original fight?
Everything's going well, by the way. We're starting off pretty good, man. We got a lot of things that we're working on as far as just changing a few aspects of her physical preparation. She's done a lot of stuff overseas in Poland, as far as like integrating more like Olympic style lifts and things like that, trying to get her strength gains up while she's out of camp per se. And now she's here with me. Now I'm just kind of fine tuning and getting her absolute strength up as much as we possibly can, because at the moment she's very lean, so we want to make sure that we aren't gaining any more muscle tissue because of the fact that she has to make the weight. So starting next week, which will be about 8 weeks out, we're going to go ahead and bring the volume of training down as far as her strength training and weightlifting, and actually work on more maximal speed, maximal explosive power, speed strength and stuff like that, just to make sure that she's maintaining her strength, but she can also work on keeping that speed and actually improving that power output through a long duration. Her conditioning is top notch, man. We did a test this weekend actually, and her VO2 is through the roof, man. She's actually in shape right now to go 5.5s. So I'm actually very happy with that. And her recovery is good. She can recover like pretty much anybody, probably better than anybody I've seen right now. And I've trained a lot of fighters. I guess the closest one right now would probably be King Mo, as far as how she can recover between rounds, which is very good. We want to make sure that that's more optimal than anything. I think that would be more crucial, just in case we have to, go those extra 5-minute round or five rounds. She'd be ready as soon as she comes off the stool again. She's ready to go at 100%. So I think that that's a crucial part. I know that's a crucial part in the game plan. But other than that, we're just kind of making sure that we are doing things correctly from the jump. We're getting everything in order. And I've been putting out a lot of videos as far as, her preparation so far. You could catch them on my YouTube. You can see them on my Instagram. And I'm doing this for a simple fact that, we're not going to show any of her skills training. We're not going to show any of her tactical training to an extent, because that's a secret. We really want to keep that, to ourselves. But, as far as content and showing what she's doing, how she's getting stronger, how she's getting more in shape, how she's actually improving from a physicality standpoint, I think that's important for people to see, because we're not just standing here doing nothing. We're actually working and trying to get this belt back. And I think, actually, I know we will get that belt back. So,
I mean, if anybody hasn't heard it yet, one of our episodes, I believe episode 25, is us talking about perfecting athletes, her former nutrition specialist, and her, the people that handle her weight cut. They are out of the picture. They were unceremoniously pieced out after the last fight. Are you going to be handling her nutrition going into this fight?
Yeah, I think it's a collection of people that are actually going to help her out. I mean, For me, my goal right now is to make sure that she's recovering per training session. So the supplementation, the food intake, the things like that are going to be solely depicted upon how we see her evolve as we go further in camp. And yeah, me, Mike Brown, and and her, she's actually taken upon herself to really be educated on this, and we'll kind of pick each other's brains, or actually kind of slingshot things off of each other to see exactly what we need to do. But for the most part, yeah, I'll be helping her out with her diet and her nutrition, and then from there, obviously have guys that I can converse with, like a Tony Ricci and a Chris Algieri that I can actually go to if I need to. But we're getting full blood work done this week. We just got her full body fat and metabolic rate this weekend, so everything's in order for us to actually put it into place and program it accordingly so that she can be at the best that she can be, and she can step on the scale comfortably and make the weight and refuel and rehydrate to her optimal performance come the next day.
I mean, she's really, in a weird way, I mean, we're going to see it, but this really might have worked out for the best for her in that, she made the decision to finally get away from them. Hopefully this makes the weight cut and all these things better. I mean, she pushed her to, like you said, to inform herself. She has someone like you there who's a legitimate friend who isn't trying to use her as a way to get more fame and, just being a coach. And then because of that, What happened?
I said, you said that. I didn't say that. Just to make sure.
And, because of the relationships you have with guys like Tony Ricci and all these guys that that are great nutritionists, she's getting like a really more complex and even better set of nutrition training because you have your knowledge, and then you can ask these guys who, like a Tony Ricci, who's like the salt of the earth good guy who will help you out, and she's getting like probably a much better situation going into this, and that's got to be exciting considering you're hearing all the stories about she's saying she cut, what did she say? She had to cut like 40 pounds in the last 15 hours, some crazy number or whatever. But, hopefully it all should turn out a lot better. It's going to be fascinating, the fact that she's having the rematch in New York again, which is kind of crazy and interesting. But, I mean, I'm excited for that. I'm excited how it all plays out. Moving from there to another women's UFC champion that you are connected with and friendly is Amanda Nunes. Now, there's a lot of talk about Amanda Nunes possibly facing Cyborg. That is not happening now because Cyborg is not going to face Kunitskaya, I believe is how you say her name, in the main event of the Detroit pay-per-view, which she's saving. Also, I think, on a side note, I think she's taking that fight because she's doing all she can to finish out her UFC contract because she's made it no secret. She's pretty much openly flirting with Bellator and wants to go there. But that aside, if that fight could happen, because I think Cyborg still has a couple more fights. I mean, there's really no one on Amanda's dance card at this point. There's no clear contender. Maybe Raquel Pennington, that might be the next obvious possible choice. But in a hypothetical Amanda Nunes Cyborg matchup, how do you think Amanda matches up against Cyborg, right up there with Joanna as one of the greatest women's mixed martial arts of all time?
Yeah, man, Cyborg's a beast. I mean, she's top notch. She's definitely one of the top female fighters in the world. Amanda, I think that with the range and the ability to be fast and explosive and just her overall game as far as her judo and her jiu-jitsu, I think it kind of negates a lot of Cyborg's strengths. And let's face it, man, Amanda can throw hands. Amanda can strike as well, very well. So, I mean, I think that will play a good part in our role as being more successful in the fight if that ever happened. I don't think it will, but I do see her gaining an edge in all aspects of that fight because Cyborg is not a younger Cyborg anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
So and Amanda's just making her peak, right there. I think she's right at the right age. I don't think that she's slowing down at all. And I think that actually she's on the incline, whereas Cyborg, she made it to the pinnacle of her career. And she's actually, I don't want to say on the downside of it, but she is a little bit older. Yeah. So things may play into a factor there.
I mean, I'm fascinated by that fight if it were to happen. And, if it were, this is the time to happen because divisional champions or super fights, whatever, mega fights are happening more than ever now with this new ownership, so they'll do anything. But I'm fascinated by the fight because I really feel like they mirror each other. Like, I feel like Amanda is almost a smaller faster version of Cyborg. They're very similar, and they're both strong. They're both big for their division. I think the only real difference is that Amanda has speed and youth, and Cyborg has experience. So it's just curious how that would play out. Also, Cyborg hasn't fought. I think Amanda has fought better talent, but Cyborg has a granite chin, and I don't think Amanda has fought like heavy punchers. She's fought good strikers, but can she handle the return fire?
Let me tell you something, man. I seen her in the gym, and she doesn't spar any of the females in the gym. Let's just put it like that.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying? And I'm not talking down about any of the females in our gym.
Yeah, of course.
We got a host of fucking killers in our gym. But what I'm saying is that Amanda can take a punch and she can give a punch. Let's just put it like that. And I've seen her go against guys that are legit, and she quote unquote pick them apart.
Yeah.
But also, she can take a punch. She can take a lick, and that's the greatest thing about it, is that she's not afraid to fight. So she'll take it to Cyborg, where she's not gonna cover up and run away. So that'll be interesting too, because I don't think Cyborg's ever really faced any type of fighter like that, where actually she's gonna be just as much the aggressor as her. So, what do you think?
No, I agree, and that's interesting, and that's why because you have that in on working there, seeing her, and that's really the only big question I ever had with that. I mean, because there was also a question of could she go further, what she proved against Shevchenko and recent fights, so she can go the distance. The question is, could she take big shots? Because as talented as Shevchenko and say Holly Holm are as strikers, they're not power punchers. Cyborg is probably the biggest power puncher in women's mixed martial arts of all time. So, but if she's going in there with men and the bigger men, and it's proves well what she can do, because she has a speed advantage. I mean, going on from that, this announcement, it's a few weeks old, but I think it was worth it to talk about. I mean, I'm excited about this, after UFC 220, it was fine. It was talked about, and it got actually made. Daniel Cormier be facing Stipe Miocic. I actually wrote an article for MMA Suck about this, because I feel this is finally, for the first time since, in my opinion, BJ Penn versus GSP, a super fight / mega fight that is completely warranted, something fans wanted, and something that should happen, because just like GSP did and BJ Penn did in their time, I think it was 2008 that fight happened, something like that. It was a long time ago now. They had sufficiently cleaned out their division. There wasn't much on the horizon, and at this point, Stipe now has the record for most defenses. There really clearly is no threat on the horizon that's overly deserving. For Daniel, the only probably real clear threat is Gustafsson, and Gustafsson had surgery. That fight could be made, but they both have sufficiently cleaned out the division, especially with no John Jones. So I'm super excited about this fight. Can't wait for it. I hope everything goes fine. There are no injuries leading into it. The question I ask you is, this is a win-win for both of them in certain different ways, and you can read my article on Sucka about it. But does a win for Daniel Cormier, despite the John Jones losses, would this maybe put him in at least the conversation of the best USA mixed martial arts of all time?
It's hard to say that, man. Because of the fact that he lost to John convincingly twice.
Yeah.
I like Daniel Cormier as a fighter, and I heard he's a pretty good guy too as well, just from inside people. But I think that I would want to say that. I want to say, he may be the pound for pound greatest, but it's hard because he has that asterisk with a John Jones. If John Jones was never in the picture, of course he would be. But you still lost to that one individual twice convincingly. It wasn't like, he could have won, or it was like a split decision. He took it to him, and then I think he knocked him out the second. Was it the second fight, right?
Yeah, the second fight, TK'd him.
So I mean, it's tough, but I do think this is good for the sport in general, because these are both guys. One, Daniel's fought at heavyweight, so it's not a new thing for him.
Exactly.
And he's already kind of he's a bigger guy, walks around big. He's super athletic for the size that he is, and he can negate a lot of the things that Miocic is good at, which is boxing with his wrestling. And so, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see the matchup, but also more interesting to see what kind of a draw it's going to bring to the UFC and to mixed martial arts in general, because it is a legit super fight, mega fight, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, I mean, and what's like you just perfectly said, and I bring it up in my article too. This guy's undefeated at heavyweight. Dan Cormier, I believe, is like 12-0 at heavyweight. I mean, he's fought Josh Barnett, Frank Mir. I mean, he's not like he fought small heavyweights. He's fought very big heavyweights and did well against them. And in those fights, won almost pretty much every round.
And now that he's at a bigger class, he doesn't have to make the weight, which means he doesn't have to suck his body down or diet or anything like that. He can be comfortable in training camp and just worry about the fight in general, which obviously is something that everybody should, I think, take into account. Whereas if you're trying to make weight the entire time in camp, it takes away from your skills, your technical and tactical training, because in your mind, you still have to suck your body down to make a weight that's, not really your real or legit weight class. And I had this conversation with Dustin Poirier yesterday, actually. And for the fact that, like, when he was at 45, the entire camp he didn't even like, because he had to worry about getting up and dieting and worry about his weight. Now he comes to practice, he comes to training happy, joking, just enjoying the process and in looking forward to the fight, whereas opposed to when he was at 45, he just wanted to get it over with so he can go back to regular living. So I think that with the fact that he's able to just train and train hard, not worry about his weight, this can be a good outcome for Daniel if, he takes it as serious as we think he should,
Yeah, I mean, and he's far better. I mean, Daniel Cormier today would whip heavyweight Dan Cormier's ass. I mean, he's so much better now than he was. Yeah. And also, he's a smarter professional, because then I'm part of his issue with heavyweight was because he had a kidney failure issue back in the day with his Olympic wrestling training. What knocked him out of, I think, his second Olympic chance. And, he was a different fighter. He just blew himself up to like 240 pounds. I can definitely see him coming at a very healthy, leanish 230, because I think he's smart enough to know that the one advantage he may have is a speed advantage. Not that Stipe is slow, but he's got good solid speed for his size, and he can use that to his advantage, which he will need to do because strength is going to be interesting, and Stipe is a good wrestler. But I mean, and it's a win-win for both of them, because it's more so for Daniel, and it's tough for Stipe because he's a favorite, but still, Stipe is already in the conversation as the best heavyweight of all time, and if he now goes and beats a 205 who has experience at heavyweight, has done well there, who is a pound-for-pound guy, because that's what's great about it compared to the GSP, BJP. And these guys, if you go through various lists, and I talk about in the article too, like MMA Junkie, USA Today, UFC's rankings, ESPN rankings, these guys are like top 7 and near the top 5 of all these rankings. Daniel's ahead of him the most. So you're beating a pound-for-pound guy, you're beating a former heavyweight. I mean, it puts Stipe even in the conversation as greatest of all time, and I think solidifies him as the best heavyweight of all time. So I can't wait for that fight. I mean, moving on from that, back to another big fight and a fighter you are connected with and you just mentioned. So perfect segue, Phil. Well done. Is Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier matchup at UFC Glendale. Very excited fight. Good. This could be a great fight. Interesting matchup for both guys. Fascinating, tough, durable. Both of them got serious dog in them. Does this? I think it does. Does this win finally get Poirier a title shot against a Nurmagomedov and Ferguson winner?
Yeah, if he doesn't, then there's a problem. You know what I mean? I think there's definitely an issue there when it comes to that. Like, who else does he need to beat at the end of the day to get a title shot? I think he should already had one, but that's just me being biased as a coach. In general, if people think this is going to be like some bloodbath or something like that, let me tell you something, man. We're going to technically pick Gaethje apart. Tactically and technically, he's better in all aspects of the game. Yeah. So for that aspect, and people think, Dustin is obviously a fighter's fighter. What that basically means is that he's not afraid to get in a dogfight and go after it. That's just the way he is. That's how he's been brought up. But at the end of the day, when you're just technically better than an individual, what's the point of going through that and actually, creating a risk of you, having the opportunity to get injured or hurt or, knocked out or whatever the case may be, and give that other guy a chance. So for us, it's more about being calm, being collected, knowing that we can technically and tactically beat him in all aspects of the game. And that's what we aim to do.
I agree with everything you said. Dustin, he's crazy sometimes. He'll he just goes full on Wolverine, feral dog.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, as long as he avoids that, I completely agree with everything he said. I think he's just technically better. He's been so good at 155. Like you can see, he's always been a real good striker, well rounded. But you can see like the sharpening of his tools and the experience, the maturity coming into him and what he does. I mean, he really should. This could be a standout performance for him because even despite the loss Gaethje had in his last fight to Alvarez, he's still a big name. People are going to be watching this fight. Everybody likes him, so it's interesting. But moving from there, and this is the thing that scares me for Dustin in terms of if he wins this fight and should get a title shot, is the possible return of Conor McGregor, because I can see Conor McGregor say, I want to fight now, and that he's going to jump Dustin because he's their golden boy, and it's unfortunate. And the thing about when they announced that the Nurmagomedov and Ferguson are now going to fight, your boy, I know you there's full boy status with you, DW, I know he's in your phone, you know, you guys talk and text all the time. Dana White in the press conference, when talked to by journalists,
all right, my boy, but go ahead.
This dude would not admit Conor's getting stripped. Like, he called this fight between Ferguson and Nurmagomedov an undisputed title fight, but yet Conor's not stripped. What the hell is going on? What is your thoughts on it? To me, this is infuriating, and just if it makes fighters mad and they want to leave, like I can't blame them. Like, how are you gonna have two of your best fighters? I mean, Ferguson and Nurmagomedov are two of the best fighters in the whole company fighting for a title that's a mystery title because of Conor McGregor. It's crazy. It's maddening.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, that's the case that we have to deal with, you know. But you can't get mad at Conor. You really can't, man, because he's done and set out what he wanted to do, and now he's got the UFC kind of by the balls in a sense, because he's the biggest draw ever, you know, in mixed martial arts, period. I mean, over Ronda Rousey, he's got it, man. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows, even the fighters that fought him know them because he fought them. You know, which is crazy to me. And these are even like, and Dustin even still gets it nowadays. Like, man, I can't believe you fought, you know, Conor McGregor. It's like, motherfucker, he's been fighting way before Conor McGregor's been in the UFC. Like, but it is what it is, and that's just the, you know, that's the way it has to be at right now, because the state of the UFC and the marketing and the entertainment factor that they're going through because of the new ownership and things like that. So I think that plays a big role. I don't think the Fertittas would let that ride, but I don't know. You know what I mean? If this was 5 years ago, maybe it wouldn't happen like that. But, you know, it is what it is now because they're trying to make it more mainstream. So in order to make it more mainstream, you have to get the biggest draw possible to stay in the direct promotion or in the sport in general, because he'll go to jump shit to boxing again and make another $1 million. And then, you know, what do you have left? So you have to keep him still there and almost keep him happy, because he can leave. It's not like he's pigeonholed to stay in MMA, or it definitely not stay in the UFC. So from a business perspective, I understand what they're doing. From a fighter's perspective, I would be pissed.
Yeah, so, ethically, it makes no sense. I mean, their greed is putting them in stupid positions. Like, their greed to be a part of this fight with Floyd put Conor in this insanely much more stable financial situation where he doesn't need them anymore. And I don't know how they did not have the foresight to go, if we give him this, he's going to make too much money that we can't afford to go and pay him. We're not going to go give him $20 million a fight. So, like, they should have just put their foot down, wrote it out. If he wants to go retire and do something else, that's on him. But they because of greed's sake, they put themselves in a stupid position where they got to bend over back for this guy, and it alienates other fighters that are just as talented who are making far less money, and it's unfortunate. I mean, now to the flip side of that kind of thing, where instead of the company making weird fights that hurts the division, and I want to talk about fighters trying to make fights that hurt the division. And I get it, I totally understand what's going on here, but during the week, Tyron Woodley and Nate Diaz were flaming the fire of a rumored possible matchup between those two. Nate will come back saying that was a worthwhile fight to come back for. Tyron Woodley, we all know Tyron wants the money fight, fair enough. I totally understand that. Dana White denied it. Tyron Woodley said, look, I never said I got an agreement, but they have talked to us about it, blah, 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 blah. I like Tyron Woodley a lot, and I totally get what he's doing money-wise, but I can only imagine if things were flipped and this was Robbie Lawler a couple years ago saying, I want to fight Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz instead or whatever, and they weren't, and especially, at least it was Nick. Nick has at least a pedigree at welterweight. Nate Diaz wasn't welterweight, and he got ragdolled by Rory McDonald. He got ragdolled by, I forgot, somebody else, like Jake Ellenberg, something like that. He has never been good at 170, so he does not deserve a title shot. So wouldn't Tyron be so mad and pissed if it was reversed and Robbie Lawler did this, but yet he's doing it? Like, wouldn't it be probably better off just, fuck it, relinquish the title and go have all the money fights you want? Like, it's unfair to guys like Rafael Dos Anjos or Stephen Thompson who kind of got to sit there and go, well, I can't make more money because I can't get a title shot against a champion.
Well, the problem is that Tyron wants to be a champ, and he is a champ. So, like, why would at the end of the day he still wants that belt? Yeah. But he also wants to make money. And the thing is that the UFC is to blame on some aspects because of the fact that they let it ride with Conor. So now every other fighter, just because Tyron has a platform to say so, but every fighter wants that big money fight. But Tyron is now at the position that he is in that he can actually request it. Yeah. So beforehand, before Conor ever did this shit, nobody was talking about it. Nobody did that because it was unheard of. It's the same thing now. He's setting the mark. Conor, again, is setting the mark for all other fighters to do what they do. That's why fighters are talking shit more. That's why fighters are being more brash and going on Twitter, going on social media, and trying to pick their own fights. Before the 6-7 years ago, this was not happening. Nope. You know what I'm saying? So it's just the way it evolved. And now you have to deal with the consequences of fighters when they get a certain platform. They're going to ask for the fights that they want, not the fights that you're going to give them. So what are you going to do now? You know what I mean?
And that's the quandary they've put themselves in. You said it perfectly. He wants to be a champion, but he also wants money fights. And those kind of things counteract each other in this current business model, because there was a time where Anderson Silva, BJ Penn, even Brock Lesnar, GSP, when they were the champions, they were the biggest stars. So it was a connection with the fan base. If you're a champion, you're the best. You want to see these guys. But their business model has changed where they want to go for the name fighters who they think can sell, which is fine, but you're degrading the championships. And now a guy like Tyron, while champion, because you don't maybe market him as strongly because of such, he doesn't have greater value as a champion, yet he is one of the best fighters in the world and a champion. So he should be in money fights. So he's in a weird position. It puts the division in flux, and it's so strange. And the same thing with Demetrius Johnson. Like Demetrius Johnson, we all want to see him versus TJ, and Demetrius Johnson came out saying that he will do the fight only if it's on another big card so he can make money, because there's been no marketing behind him to just make money by himself, which is insane. Well,
unfortunately, and like I said, he's a little guy, so it's not marketable, right? But he's pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Yeah. In my opinion, I think nobody's better from a technical standpoint for what he does and the way he puts things together. It's unmatched. But because of the fan base, because of how people think, if he was a heavyweight, he'd be a superstar.
Yes.
But fortunately, he's a small guy. There's not a lot of finishes. Although he did that one finish with that armbar. It was fucking crazy. And then he's knocked out. He's had a few knockouts, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they put themselves in a bad position because there was a time he wasn't getting finishes, but in his last 4 or 5, I think he has. He finished Timmy Elliott. He submitted Wilson Hayes, who's one of the best submission guys in that division.
I think a lot of it also has to do with his level of competition, where he's kind of set himself at the peak of everything, and nobody really knows who he's fighting. So if he fights TJ, that's a little bit different. And if he does well, and let's say he knocks TJ out, now we're talking, okay, well, look at this. Yeah. So, I mean, shit. That's the only thing I see what may happen is if he can come up a weight class and be dominant there and actually run through that weight class, and maybe, Cody Garbrandt, things like that. Now you're talking, okay, we can make some money now because people want to see big name fighters fight other big name fighters, and they want to see them do well and be spectacular in finishes.
And what's hurt him too, and this is fair point for them, and they probably the excuse they make is the division is new. I mean, he's the first big star of that division. He isn't a guy that's working his way up, because a perfect example really for him is a guy in boxing, for example, Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao, I think he started at like 115, 120. He was like small weight because he was malnourished as a poor kid in the Philippines. But he came up and he had a Romero, he had Marco Antonio Barrera, he had a Marquez, he had guys that were already established because the division was so well established before him to make names off of, and then he could move up to fight De La Hoya and all these guys. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that, and he may have it in TJ, maybe that helps him, but it almost feels like as long as they don't destroy the division, which I think there's a possibility, you've heard rumblings of that, but it'll probably be for the next star that comes up that maybe beats him, they'll probably maybe finally get some notice and the division might come because he's the first one to do it, and that never really works out well for anybody. Like, lightweight wasn't a big division when BJ first started doing it, so I mean, it's an unfortunate thing. But moving on from that, from relevant to irrelevancy, and that is the rumors of a Roy Jones Jr. and an Anderson Silva boxing match. Again, we've had this a couple years ago. We had this. Anderson's in a weird spot. His career pretty much may be over because he's tested again with USADA. There was probably steroids and other stuff in it. He's probably going to get a 2-year suspension. The guy's already like 40-something years old. Roy Jones just had his last retirement, quote-unquote, boxing fight on UFC Fight Pass, so clearly there's a relationship with the organization they have. He only will come back, he says, for Anderson Silva fight. The thing I ask you is, should anyone really care about this fight? I don't think I care about this, unless it was an MMA.
Nah, well, I don't even care, man. To be honest, I think Roy Jones, didn't he have his last fight? He said last weekend.
Yeah, on the UFC Fight Pass fight. That's supposed to be his retirement fight.
And I heard that fight was like god awful. So, listen, man, Roy Jones is already a legend. I don't know why he needs to. I mean, unless he needs money, you know. And then also Anderson Silva's a legend, just because those two. I mean, listen, I'm gonna tell you the honest truth, man. USADA is crazy. Like, you can have a tarnished supplement from taking BCAAs and get caught. So I mean, it's tough to like really pass. Now, mind you, I don't know I didn't check too far into it because one, he's not one of my guys, so I don't work with him and I don't really look into it like that. But it's so hard to actually pass a USADA test if you're even taking a vitamin. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not saying that he's completely clean and I'm backing it, but whatever. The issue here is that, like, I think that these guys need to call it, and it is hard, man, when all you know is fighting. So for them to call it quits, you can see it, and that every fighter goes through this situation. I mean, look at even Matt Brown is coming back again after he said he was retiring. So, and Matt Brown, because he's a fighter, man, he's a fighter at heart. There's really nothing he sees himself doing other than fighting. So it's hard to let something that you've been putting so much time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears in for years and years and years, to be like, okay, I'm done. You know what I'm saying? And not do nothing. So it's hard for a fighter to do that. And you got to know that I've been around and I've been a fighter and I've been around fighters for half my life, and all of them go through this. It's just who's willing or who has something else that they can fall back on to fill that void. And a lot of them do, but most of them don't. So that's what you'll see. You see guys trying to stay in that organization, try to stay in the fight game. And unfortunately, they start to get injured. They start to develop these problems as far as, things like CTE and traumatic brain damage, things like that. You don't want to see this, but in time, it will end up happening if you stay in it too long.
Yeah, I mean, the fight, I would not want to see this in boxing. I mean, if it were to happen, which is more than possible, but and I have a feeling it will because of the fight was on UFC. The UFC will allow Anderson to do this, but it's like a poor, very, very old, poor version of Floridian and Conor. So who wants to see this? But if it was an MMA match, that would be fascinating. It'd be like a new version of when Randy fought James Toney, and that was fascinating, interesting. Plus, in the end, it does nothing for boxing. It just really would be to help the sport of MMA by bringing in arguably the greatest ever, right up there with anybody, and Roy Jones, and fascinating him doing a MMA. He is an MMA fan. He knows about the sport. Having him go against Anderson, who isn't going to necessarily wrestle him, and it's going to be a stand-up fight, that would fascinate me. In the cage, Roy Jones, but yeah, it's just two guys who aren't ready to go away yet, and that's, it is what it is. But I wanted to end FSP on a strength and conditioning related question we had a few weeks ago because we mentioned Stipe Miocic. He had the fight with Francis Ngannou. Stipe had a fantastic game plan. Some of it wasn't the most prettiest thing in the world. It was literally laying on top or leaning on top of Ngannou to finish him off. After his blitzkrieg in the first round, it's what a lot of people thought might happen. He gassed out this big, massive man of muscle.
Yeah.
What do you feel in your opinion? What precipitated his gassing? I mean, could it have been just an energy dump for such a big fight, a title fight? Is what happened to him fixable?
I mean, who knows, man? It could be the fact that it was a big fight and an adrenaline dump may happen, but he's a big guy with a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
And then if you didn't adequately train the aerobic system needed, especially outside of camp, and build that aerobic base, like I've always said before, it's going to be hard for him to transition and get all those modalities kind of worked in and all those aerobic systems optimal to do a 5-minute round. I think this is the first time he's been in championship rounds.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the fact it's the first time he's ever been on that high of a spectrum for a fight at this magnitude. So that could play a big factor in it. And then also, Miocic was pushing the pace pretty well, but it was a factor like, and I know he worked with Bo Sandoval out there at the UFC Performance Institute. And those guys, they can only do so much. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I'm putting it all on them. Yeah. It's more about just having a well-known base of what the fighter is and how he likes to train or how he likes to fight. And it's real subjective to how you go about training that specific fighter for his strengths. And if if you're not fully assessing him and fully assessing his fight style, then that could be a problem as well. So I think it has to do with, one, properly preparing him outside of camp, because the 8 weeks that you're in camp, a lot of that has to do with your tactical and technical training, whereas opposed to when you're outside of camp, it's more about general fitness and getting them prepared from a physiological standpoint and a physical standpoint to basically taper and peak for the fight itself. But if you try to do it too quickly, you're not going to get the adequate stimulus adaptation to perform at the highest level, especially a UFC heavyweight title fight. So in that aspect, I think that they should have spent a little bit more time maybe on the outside of camp to really build an aerobic base. But who knows? I wasn't a part of his camp. I can maybe ask Bo what happened, but at the same time, I'm not going to make any stipulation or say that, they did this wrong or they did that wrong, because I don't know. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know the fighter. Well, what I can say is that maybe next time have him work more aerobically, because obviously he's a strong and powerful individual. So I don't think taking 5% off or 10% off of his strength and power and really working on his aerobic capacity, something like how we did with Tyron, will benefit him, from a conditioning standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, and we all know the heavyweight division. I mean, it's just a division where these are huge human beings, and they're just not built for those kind of strenuous acts for so long. I mean, there's very few Cain Velasquez's in the world, like Randy Couture's, that can handle that. I mean, it is, and he gassed out bad. It was like already in the second round, he was looking dead tired. I mean, is that kind of thing where, you know what? It was an issue with even a guy like Alistair Overeem and other fighters. He's just not going to be one of those guys that can go real hard for real long. So he's, he's just going to be a first round destruction guy.
Well, I mean, I think it also has to do with a background of sporting activity. Like when you say Cain was a wrestler, a high level wrestler all his life. So he's been put through the ringer as far as from an endurance standpoint. He's probably been training high levels of aerobic capacity mixed in with lactic conditioning his whole entire life. So in that case, he can be a big guy, but also have that aerobic capacity or that aerobic strength to go ahead and go those 5-minute rounds so efficient, But like for Francis, I don't think that he had that background of that type of style. So then when you try to organize that and optimize it and work it, it's just harder for him, because now it's a new stimulus. It's going to take longer for him to adapt to, and you're not going to have enough time if you're only doing an 8-week camp. It has to be year round. You have to develop this outside of camp so it can carry over into camp. And it's hard for a heavyweight, man. I mean, yeah, you said it directly. I mean, these big guys, man, like you don't see strong men, going and doing aerobic work like that. But they still need some type of aerobic work. It's just not to that extent. And the high levels of output in an MMA fight is totally different than your standard like big man type training or big man type of sports, like a strongman event or something like that. They just don't have that ability, or football in general. Like football, there's a lot of big guys in football, but let's face it, it's anaerobic in nature, and they're only going for short bouts of energy, 7 seconds at the most, and they get a 45-second break. So you see a lot of that when it comes to the heavyweights. They'll be able to explode for a little bit, but then they have to take a break. And if you got a guy that like a Cain Velasquez who has that aerobic capacity, they're gonna take him out because they just keep constant tension on him, keep constant pressure. And that's how, people finish fights. So I think in the heavyweight standpoint, because they're already a big guy, and let's face it, more weight, more muscle, more strength output. You'll have more motor unit recruitment just because your muscle fibers and the cross-sectional area is so much bigger than a little guy. Yeah. Just in general, if you're a bigger guy, you're just going to be stronger. You know what I mean? It sounds real meatheadish, but it's true.
Yeah, for sure.
So at the end of the day, like, do we really need to work more strength? Do we really need to work more power? Fuck no, they got a shit ton of that. Let's go ahead and work some conditioning. Let's keep on conditioning these guys so that at least it's like a 60-40 split instead of a 90-10. So I think that's what we need to do, because I have a couple heavyweights, you know what I'm saying? And I think most of the time, a lot of them lack that conditioning because of the fact that they are already genetically gifted with the strength and power to knock people out. And that's why people like to see the fights. But if you got somebody with a hard chin that has good technique, you're not going to actually knock them out in the first round a lot of the times. So now they have to at least go to the second, third, fourth. And if it's a championship fight, they have to go 5 rounds. So you have to train them accordingly for those 5 rounds.
Yeah, the perfect example is Alexei Olenek. I mean, he's a big guy, and he can go hard because he can grapple, and he has that lung capacity to do it. I mean, he's a guy that maybe he's not the best striker, but he's beating guys that may have been favorites because he can take them down, work them, and grapple, and have that energy to do it, where so many big guys can't do that. I mean, it's, and that shows the work you've done with somebody like that to make him an even better fighter at an advanced age, because he's not a young guy anyway. But, yeah. I mean, that's all we have for this week. It was fun doing this. Always love doing FSP. As always, let them know the socials so they can holla at you and check out some of these really cool videos. I've been watching them too with you and Joanna preparing, you and Dustin Poirier preparing, where they can find all this stuff.
Yeah, so my Instagram, you'll find clips of those videos and then all of my other social media content. Instagram is Daru Strong. My Twitter is @DaruStrong. And then my YouTube is Phil Daru. Just look for it on YouTube, search it. And then what I'm doing is I'm just going to go through each day, almost every day of training for her physical preparation, is at least leading up to UFC 223. And then I'll be doing a Dustin Poirier episodes too for UFC Glendale. So look out for that. That's going to be on my YouTube. And then also my Snapchat is DaruStrong1. Although I'm not liking the new Snapchat. We talked about this. I'm not liking it. So I'm probably not going to put too much videos up anymore on Snapchat. I'll probably just do a couple of pics and maybe a few videos, but not like to the extent I was doing before. So mainly, if you really want to see some stuff, go ahead, go to my Instagram. You can even follow me on Facebook too, Phil Daru, and then my YouTube channel. Also, if you're going to be in the Vancouver, British Columbia area, I'm coming out there on March 11th through the 13th. I'll be doing a seminar out there and a full workshop clinic at Grindhouse. And you can DM me and I'll give you all the information there. But other than that, also make sure that you check out the engineering combat athlete seminar in Burbank, California at Muscle Farm HQ, where I'll be teaming up with PJ Nestler and Dan Gardner. That's going to be epic. And then I'm off to Poland again. So it's going to be good. And then also, you know what, Jason, tell them about what you got going on as far as your article for this episode, and then, what you got going on in the future.
I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but we'll be doing some stuff related to technique talk and, some other things for some sites. And then always got the MMA Sucker work coming out, like the one I mentioned before. We got the MMA Sucker weekly show where I go over some things and talk about some of the articles on the site, some of the news of the week. Always doing reviews and the other kind of stuff. So those things are coming up. But I mean, also let me mention the Instagram, Jericho Vendetta. You can find me on Cheap Seats Chat on Twitter. Don't forget, also along with Phil's stuff on Facebook, we have Fight Strength on Facebook, and he also puts the videos there. You can watch them too at Fight Strength on Facebook and on Fight Strength _ on Twitter. Also, on the Facebook page, you can find out our sponsorship agreement. If you want to sponsor, get a sponsor spot on the show, we do a little ad copy, talk about your product, let us know. And of course, as always, you can always find our show on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, just all over the place, Player FM, all those places as always. That is it for FSP, a new episode. I hope you all enjoy it. Check out episode 30 of Fight Strength Podcast with the legend of strength conditioning. Joe DeFranco is going to be around the same time. And always check out our older episodes. I am Jason Burgos. He is Phil Daru. Until next time, everybody, peace.
Peace.